And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious edition of the Assembly Call. This is Andy Bottoms filling in for Jared Morris tonight, and we're going to be talking about IU's 85-52 victory over Mississippi Valley State today. Closed out the Indiana Classic, I believe it's called, and this game was not exactly a classic early on, but did turn out. I think the route to get to where the game ended up was probably a little bit different than most people expected, but I think the final margin of around 30 points is what most had hoped for. So Ryan Phillips is going to be here with me to break it all down for everybody, and so we're gonna talk about this game, see if there's anything really to take from it, as we've I think often struggled to do a bit in some of these preseason games, trying to figure out what does this all really mean. So we'll try to talk about some solid individual performances and look ahead a little bit to North Carolina, which is really the big game on everybody's mind next Wednesday. According to Homer Drew, that will be played at the Assembly Center. So those of you who have tickets for Assembly Hall may need to look for the address of this new venue. So I'm going to fill in for Jared and give tonight's banner moment. I think from my perspective, it had to be OG Anunoby. Certainly coming off of the last game where he didn't play, didn't play very much at all and didn't play well in the time that he was in there. Found out after the game that he was sick, and so the question was really, one, was he healthy, and how would he be able to bounce back? He answered those questions emphatically tonight with a career high of 21 points. Did a little bit of everything, hit three pointers, was 4 of 7 from the line, which was really the only blemish on his scorecard tonight, and was 4 of 7 from 2-point range. So made some nice plays off the drive, made some nice plays off the catch, finished with 8 rebounds as well, and would most certainly have had a double-double had he not set out a good chunk of the last part of the game. So those 21 points came in 26 minutes. And if what I'm looking at is correct, his plus-minus was at 30, which was the best on the team. And I thought, just from him really setting the tone, not only on the offensive end, but really, extended defensively, which was a big area of concern following the loss to Fort Wayne this week. So there were certainly times when IU was much more intent defensively, and he was a big part of that. But really liked how he, attacked in different ways. We've talked earlier this season about, him not settling for 3-pointers as much. And I thought, he made a few threes early today, but did a better job attacking the basket overall. And I think, that's the kind of performance IU's definitely going to need from him as we look ahead to the North Carolina game. And I think a good one to build on for him after a really off night from him on Tuesday. So with that, we'll remind everybody that tonight's banner moment is brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based brand by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. Connor and the team at Hoosier Proud offer a line of T-shirts and accessories that are unmatched for anyone who wants a unique, stylish way to display their own pride in being a Hoosier. I know I received my own Assembly Call shirt last week and wore the Kick Was Good shirt yesterday for the bucket game. So have enjoyed their products myself, and would encourage everybody else to check those out at HoosierProud.com. If you use the promo code Assembly, you can receive a 15% discount on your entire order. I know they had some other sales going on for Black Friday and probably some holiday shopping there. So would encourage everybody to go to HoosierProud.com and use the promo code Assembly to get 15% off. So with that, I'm going to swing it to Ryan to get his rant on tonight's game. He did get in a little bit of a Twitter rant earlier, so perhaps the rant will be a Twitter only, just like the game today was an online only event, and maybe Ryan will go a different route with his rant on the show.
I have to. I can't get into that right now. That would just. It'd be entertaining for some of you, but the rest of you would change the channel. No, I thought tonight, the guy I want to talk about is Thomas Bryant. I thought that it was a very slow night for him. I thought that Mississippi Valley State, what you can say about those guys, they're 0-8 now, but they played hard, and defensively they just packed in the paint, made it really hard to get Bryant touches, which I think Indiana's going to see a lot of this year. And in the second half, they made a concerted effort to get him the ball. And especially, there's a stretch probably about midway through the second half where they fed him consistently. And he wound up with a double-double, came out of the game. He had 11 rebounds, which was a big deal, but he also had 13 points, threw in 3 blocks. He had 2 turnovers, which were unselfish turnovers. He was trying to throw passes to guys when he may have been better off just turning around and laying the ball in or shooting it. There were interior turnovers, and it's, you like to see that he's looking around and he's looking for ways to get out of double teams or when he draws a crowd. But at the same time, he's Thomas Bryant. He should probably be trying to score there. But overall, I thought it was a good night for him. He only played 25 minutes. Anunoby and Johnson led all the Hoosiers and only played 26. So that's a good sign. You got a lot of guys getting some extended minutes off the bench, and the starters got to rest a little heading into that, what's going to be a heck of a game on Wednesday against a really good North Carolina team that's playing very well right now. So some guys got some rest. Obviously, James Blackman Jr. missed the game. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond when the competition ratchets up again on Wednesday. We saw how they responded against Kansas. Bryant and Anunoby both need to step it up, as it comes to that game.
Yeah, and just as a quick reminder for those who maybe listening to this after the fact, didn't watch the game, James Blackman Jr. did not play today. IU apparently released a statement, said he had aggravated a knee injury in the Fort Wayne game, and he was sitting out today. It sounds like from everything I could tell online, it was more precautionary in nature. It sounded like he'd warmed up a little bit, so would like to think it's just precautionary. I'm not sure if Tom Crean will share any more about that in the post game, but be sure to kind of check in on that situation. Certainly, we'll want him in uniform for Wednesday's game. But the first thing I want to talk about, Ryan, was obviously this was a somewhat important game for IU just to get the taste out of its mouth from the game against Fort Wayne on Tuesday. And I think there are probably two things most people were looking for. One was, how did the defense look in comparison to what they did against Fort Wayne, and the other was, how well did the ball move offensively, as there were some pretty stagnant offensive possessions in that loss. So with those two things as backdrop, how do you think the Hoosiers graded out in those areas in the game today?
Well, I thought, especially from the start, I thought that the ball movement was exceptional. I thought there was a lot of activity offensively, and it's clear that has been stressed to the team. I mean, you could just tell from the beginning they were being aggressive, going to the hoop, moving the ball, just trying to make the defense work, which they did not do against Fort Wayne. That was a stagnant offensive performance I've seen in a long time from this group. Going back a few years even. And so I think it was better to see that off the tip. I think that there was a stretch late in the first half where they kind of got out of sync, but then I thought the second half, it was an aggressive half offensively. And, with things like turnovers, we've talked about this on the show before. I don't mind an aggressive turnover. If you're driving and a ball gets tipped and then it goes off your leg out of bounds or something, and you're being aggressive and going to the hoop, hey, you know what? That happens. It's not a big deal. If you're, driving hard and, get the ball tapped out from behind you as well or something, and then you lose it and fumble with it, that's fine. I don't mind that. You get a charge going to the hoop, that stuff happens. What I don't like are lazy turnovers and stupid turnovers. And I think that what you got a lot in the Fort Wayne game were timid, lazy turnovers. And I think that tonight, for the most part, you had 15 turnovers. Some of those came late, though, when the subs were in. I think they were only around 12 or 13 by the time they emptied the bench. And that's a good number for IU with as many possessions as they rack up. And most of the turnovers in this game were the kind that you're fine with. There were a few silly passes, but for the most part, it's guys trying to move the ball, be aggressive, and somebody steps into a passing lane. That stuff, again, that's basketball. It happens. So I think that offensively, we saw a lot more movement, which I thought was a positive. Defensively, there's still some work to do, but I thought it was much better effort, much better preventing drives and forcing guys to shoot. And that's what they didn't do against Fort Wayne, and that's why Fort Wayne got so many open looks, was because they'd play up too high, get driven on, and then somebody would have to help, and it would leave a guy open, or they'd let him finish the drive. And I thought there was a lot of drive prevention going on tonight, and that's what it needs to do. I mean, you dare teams to beat you with three-point shots. That's what you have to do in college basketball. If they beat you, they beat you. But you cannot allow them to drive on you at will.
Yeah, I thought IU also played a little more zone tonight, which was a little bit surprising. They let some dribble penetration in the first half during a stretch where they played really poorly, quite frankly, and gave up 12 points in a row. Thought they played a little bit better in the second half in that regard and contained the dribble a bit more. I thought that was still an issue at times, but did force more shots from deep. And then offensively, I think the ball moved a lot more. The assist numbers were much better. Assist to made field goal ratio was a lot better. So I think those things were better. It's hard to take a lot of, again, as we've talked about in some of these other, non-conference games, in some ways it's hard to take a lot away from a game against a team that's vastly overmatched as it was today. But I think some positive things in that regard, but I think it certainly wouldn't I don't think either of us would say that things that went wrong there were totally fixed today. And I think, the dribble penetration issue and communication defensively is going to be a big issue against North Carolina. And I think perhaps the zone, as you kind of mentioned here in the chat, is a way to prepare for needing to play that again against the Tar Heels on Wednesday. So we've talked about two of IU's players who scored in double figures so far with OG Anunoby and Thomas Bryant, and we're going to talk about the third of those once we come back. But first, I want to take a quick minute and tell you about our other sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts has been a confusing process for a long time now, and it's always been hard to find the best deal for that game or show that you're looking to go to. None of the older ticket sites wanted to change that, but SeatGeek is different in that regard. They've come along and created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets online. SeatGeek is always the first place that I go to look for tickets to a game or concert, and everything about SeatGeek is designed to make life easier for sports and music fans. They do that by doing all the price comparison for you. They pull together, multiple ticket sites and information there to make sure that you get the best possible deal. And so SeatGeek does all the work, and you save time and money. And best of all, our listeners get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. And to get that $20 rebate, you need to download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab and click add a promo code, and then enter promo code assembly. After that, SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So we would encourage you to go out and do that today. Download the SeatGeek app and, again, use promo code assembly today. You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips. And Ryan, we wanted to talk a little bit more about one of the other players who scored in double figures today. Talked a bit about OG Anunoby, and we may circle back to him later as well, who had 21 points. But the second leading scorer for IU was Robert Johnson, who ended up with 14. I think most of those, maybe 11 of those, came in the second half, and he and OG fueled an early 14-2 run where they scored all 14 of the points in the first segment of the second half. And so, I thought it was an uneven game for Robert, who I think was -1 and plus-minus in the first half, but then, really rebounded and played well in the second half. What did you think of his overall performance tonight?
I actually thought it was a pretty good game for him. I thought defensively he was one of the guys that was preventing dribble penetration for most of the game, which, again, he's proven time and again that he's an excellent defender. I think that maybe there was a little bit more on his shoulders to try and shoulder a scoring load because James Blackman was out. Even though we're playing a really low tier team, I think that maybe he just puts that on himself. 5 of 10 from the field, 4 of 9 from 3. A couple of those threes were big though, just for the timing. And so he really stepped into some good shots. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, only 2 turnovers. Again, I thought he handled the ball a lot. I thought he played great defense. Second half was certainly better than the first offensively, but I thought the first half he really helped out offensively in the stretches where they were playing well. And while his plus minus wasn't great, I think that was a lot of other guys getting beaten with regularity and not him. So I thought it was a decent game for Robert. I think that there was just a lot put on him in this game with Blackman out and really no primary shooter on the perimeter. I mean, everybody on this team could kind of shoot, but Blackman's your go-to guy when things are breaking down, and he sort of stepped into some threes to make stuff happen. I mean, he's your boy. You're the president of the fan club. What did you think of his performance?
I thought it was a little bit uneven, and I think in listening back to the show that you guys did after Tuesday's game, I mean, I think that was the takeaway for him and a number of guys, quite honestly. But I thought this, the same thing. My one gripe with him tonight was 9 of his 10 shots came from 3-point range, and while he did hit some big ones, I think he's also shown the ability early in the season, and certainly did in the Kansas game, and had a stretch early in the Fort Wayne game where he was really attacking the basket a little bit more. Now, he did have a few assists today, and some of those I think came from attacking the rim. So not to say he didn't do that at all, but for a team that got criticized a lot for settling for threes in that Fort Wayne game, 9 of his 10 shots were from there. But again, he shot the ball well from there. He made 4, so hard to complain with the result. But not getting to the free throw line for a guy who, with Blackman out, and even when Blackman is in the game, is a primary ball handler. That would probably be my biggest, my biggest point of contention. But I thought overall, he played well and really helped them get off to that big start at the beginning of the second half, when it was really a chance to either put Mississippi Valley State away. After they had scored, I think, the last 7 in the first half, they could either put them away, build on that momentum, or let him hang around a little bit longer. And he and OG were certainly a big part of stopping that. So in that regard, a good performance, but something look to see him diversify what he's doing a little bit more in the same way that a guy like OG did today. So another guy, and I know you mentioned this on Twitter, or maybe it was on a text chain that we were on, but about Juwan Morgan. So he went back to that 6-man role tonight, although I don't think he was actually the first guy off the bench, but he moved back out of the starting lineup, ended up with 6 points on 1 of 4 shooting, did make all 4 of his free throws, 4 offensive rebounds, 5 rebounds total, an assist and a block. But sounded to me like you still were kind of, I don't know, disappointed or just seemed like a weird performance from you. So what are you seeing from him out there that's making you feel that way?
Well, I think in the first half, he just made some bad decisions with the basketball, whether it was driving in, whether it was taking a three. I think the three came in the second half, actually, but he made some bad decisions with the basketball. And that's so not Juwan Morgan. I almost feel like right now, as a sophomore who has sort of become one of the representatives of that positionless basketball thing, he might just have too much on his plate and he might be overthinking it. He's not playing poorly, but I guess I just expect more from him. And I thought later in the second half, he played much better. Look, credit to him for making all 4 of his free throws. That's going to be huge. And I've been on he and OG and Thomas and Robert Johnson to all make their free throws, because that's going to be so huge for this team. And the offensive rebounds are great. And his activity level is always up, and he always plays well when he's active. And he had a nice block on a recovery from a break, excuse me. But he also, I just feel like he's not making him a lot of noise when he's out there. And I think that defensively, he gets beaten a little bit. He got, against Fort Wayne, he got smoked consistently. I felt tonight he was getting beaten a little bit. And again, that's what he's supposed to be there for, is being a great defender, great rebounder, and then, chip in on the offensive end and be able to handle the ball when the occasion arises. Maybe it's a situation where he's a sophomore adjusting to a role that he hasn't, been in before with the playing multiple positions and things like that. Last year, he was mainly just, hey, Juwan, go in the post and, be active and then pop out for a 3 every once in a while. Now he's got a real defined role that he's maybe not comfortable with. So this could be a thing where in a month we look at it and like, okay, now he's settled in. But I just think that right now, especially with North Carolina looming, that's a guy we're going to need on Wednesday night if Indiana wants to win that game. They're going to need to get a good game out of him, a good game out of OG, and all the usual suspects who need to play well for Indiana to win.
Yeah, I think he had some trouble finishing around the rim, and I think that's one thing that you look ahead to a North Carolina game is really something to watch from him. Some of his offensive rebound came from his own misses in the Moses Malone tribute area, but I thought
I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's just a lack of concentration. And I'm not saying that Juwan's not trying harder, he's not paying attention. It's just you think it's so easy. You see a all-pro wide receiver drop a wide open pass sometimes. I mean, that's what that is. It's a lack of concentration. You take it for granted, and he's just got to focus up. I mean, he's missed several key gimmies this year so far. He had a couple against Fort Wayne where he just chucked it off the backboard, by himself under the basket and missed it. So he's got to get he's got to get better at that, and he's got to get better at finishing through contact as well.
Yep, I would agree. That was the main thing I saw from him tonight. That I don't want to say is concerning, but I guess if I want to look for one thing going forward, I think that would be it from him, because he did do a good job when he got to the free throw line, made all 4 of his free throws. And I think can be a good offensive rebounder, not just in those scenarios. He had one where he just jumped up over somebody and grabbed the rebound, a really athletic play. And I think that was, the kinds of things that we saw from him last year, which I suppose is a good enough segue as any to looking at, quickly on Zach McRoberts, who took a spot in the starting lineup with Blackman out as well. That allowed Josh Newkirk to move into the starting lineup. But McRoberts got the start, played really well in a defined role against Fort Wayne. I thought similar tonight, he stepped out and hit a 3 early, which I thought was big because, even Fort Wayne was really just daring him to shoot. And he seemed somewhat unwilling to do so in that game. So I thought, tonight stepped into one and confidently made it. I think missed another later, but overall thought he continued to play well. So I'm going to kind of lump him in with OG here, just because you didn't get a chance to talk about him, and that was the starting front court for IU. Quick thoughts on McRoberts, and then more than that, what you saw from OG tonight.
Well, McRoberts, I thought, did a nice job. He was determined to move the basketball. He was determined to keep the offense going, and sort of like a Hartman or Zeisloft last year. They aren't going to blow you away with athleticism. They each have things they can do, but they also get people organized. And I felt like he was filling that role tonight. He was getting people to the right spots, pointing out things, and he ran the offense. And he also was the one guy in the first half who was really looking to get the ball to Thomas Bryant. So I thought it was a nice start for him. I don't know if it's something we'll get used to, but he certainly carved out a role for himself so far as a guy who, when things are going wrong, he can, pop in and sort of get things straight. I thought, as far as OG goes, I think that it's almost like tonight, and I don't know if this will last, but it was like tonight a light went on with him, and it was like, man, basketball can be really easy when I just use the tools at my disposal instead of wandering on the perimeter. You saw him driving into traffic, but he's good enough to drive into traffic and finish. And you saw him, stepping confidently into a three several times, and then rebounding. 8 rebounds, 1 assist, only 1 turnover, had a block and a steal, things we expect from him. But I thought offensively, he just sort of, it was almost like a light, seriously, like a light went on, and it was, oh, there's a driving lane. Maybe I should drive, and then I don't have to get all the way to the hoop. If 3 guys come over here, I can step up and lay it in over them, or, go around people and things like that. And so, and the game for a guy like OG and Thomas Bryant, I mean, the game is easy for those guys if they just use the tools at their disposal. And so he's just got to get used to not being the scrappy guy who nobody looks for anymore, which is sort of what he was last year, and what he was, the entire time he was being recruited as well. He was this guy from out of nowhere who people didn't expect much from, and he would wow them. Well, now he's got to realize that he's one of the guys on this team, and something is expected from him, and he's got to learn to deal with that. Now, like Juwan Morgan settling into his role, maybe this is something where it's just he's uncomfortable right now, and he's still getting used to being a guy that people look to and rely on. So it might take some time, and this might be the kind of thing where, again, in a month, we're looking at like, okay, well, he's finally figured it out. He's settled in. But a night like tonight, he's certainly capable of, finishing with a career high of 21 and also adding 8 boards, and shooting 58.3% from the field. That's something he's clearly capable of and shouldn't shock anyone. And it shouldn't shock him. He should be expecting that of himself.
Yeah, I think the role thing is interesting with both he and Morgan as we talk about that. McRoberts is one guy who, and to kind of throw him into this conversation, he's a guy who exactly what is expected of him when he comes in, and he knows that as well. And I think the same could be said of OG and Juwan Morgan last year. And we talked about that on the show, that it was those guys knew what they were in the game for, and that helped everybody understand their roles, and those guys were willing to play that. Now as they get into more expanded roles and expanded, OG, I think, was intent on showing his 3-point shot early, and I think tonight was a great example of him finding balance to talk through that, or to figure that out. And so I think tonight hopefully is a step in that direction of really figuring out when to use what tools that he has available to him, and hopefully Juwan Morgan isn't far behind in that development situation. But I do think it's something to keep in mind early in the season as we watch these guys try to figure out roles and things like that. Same thing can be said of the backcourt, which we'll touch on here briefly. So as we move forward, we want to touch on some of the freshmen. This is a game when those guys get a chance to get some additional minutes. I thought there were some notable performances there. We want to talk about those guys, and Josh Newkirk, who slid into the starting lineup as well, and I believe led the team in assists tonight. But before we do that, wanted to give a minute and talk about why you should activate your free Assembly Call membership. 3 key reasons, really. And one, quick and easy. You can go to assemblycall.com/join. It takes just about 15 seconds to get your name on there. It's how you get our best content. When you join that, you receive the weekly 6-Banner Saturday IU Hoops News Roundups, as well as the detailed post-game emails, like the ones that will go out after tonight's game. And then it's also how you can connect with us in the Assembly Call community, and only members can access our moderated post-game live chats and discussion forum. So if you like what you're hearing on the Assembly Call, become a member. It's the next logical step for you. And to do that, you can join us for free at assemblycall.com/join. You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we're talking about IU's 85-52 victory over Mississippi Valley State on Sunday evening. And Ryan, one of the guys we haven't really talked about to this point was Josh Newkirk. He slid into the starting lineup with James Blackman out. And ended up with just 5 points. Missed all 3 of his 3-pointers. I think Jared talked about that a little bit. Water finds its level at some point. He was 7 of 8 or 7 of his last 8 coming into this game. Missed all 3 of his threes, but he did have 6 assists, 4 rebounds, had a couple turnovers. But I thought overall played a decent game. From him. Again, led the team in assists with those 6 assists and grabbed 4 boards as well. And both of his shots that he made were ones driving to the basket. One was an and one where he got to the line. Another was a good drive to the lane. What did you see from him? And do you see, questions continue to persist around who is IU's point guard? So some could look at only the box score from tonight's game and say he had 6 assists. Maybe he's that guy. I guess, how would you respond to that notion?
Well, I thought he looked much better in this game than he did against Fort Wayne. I think against Fort Wayne, he just seemed lost and was much slower and was not playing that up-tempo IU basketball, and that really held the offense back. And he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of guys doing that. I thought he played a very good game tonight, especially off the jump. He was super aggressive to start, set the tone early, moved the ball around really well, and also attack the basket. And guess what? If you're not going to stand there and be able to knock down threes as the point guard in this offense, you better be getting to the hoop. And he did that tonight. And I think that I agree that with you guys, I don't think he's a bad 3-point shooter. I don't think that's going to be a persistent issue, but he's not going to shoot 45%. He's not going to be Yogi. He's not going to shoot between 42 and 45, but he's going to hit them. So he might be streaky. I don't know. We haven't seen enough of him to know if he's a streaky shooter or what the deal is, but he was 0 for 3 tonight. All 3 were pretty good shots. I didn't think, I mean, as far as I can remember, I think all 3 were pretty good shots. They just didn't go down. But yeah, he is a guy who is very willing to move the basketball and find open people and create opportunities for others with his driving. And that's key. And that's why I think he should be in the starting lineup over Juwan Morgan. I mean, I know against Fort Wayne, they started Morgan as having, to have some more size in the lineup and had him bringing the ball up. And I just did not like that lineup. I thought it was slow, and I thought it was just guys looking out of position. And I think that Newkirk at that point guard spot, it's something he's comfortable with, and he can get IU moving in the right direction. So I think that was the right call to start him tonight. I think that, again, it's a work in progress with some of these guys because they haven't played. I know these guys have been practicing together for a long time. Newkirk's been here over a year. I mean, but I can't explain to you how different it is actually playing in a game with each other than it is practicing, than it is, watching, than it is playing scrimmages and all that stuff. These guys have not been playing together that long. And so it's going to take time for these guys to get used to each other. And I think Newkirk's going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the team sort of coalescing and finding that identity.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from him tonight overall. Again, I think your assessment was spot on in terms of if you're not going to hit 3-point shots, then you got to move the ball and get into the lane. And I thought that was what he brought. Didn't really feel like he forced shots, as you mentioned. And overall, a solid performance. Was a good distributor. And on a night when Robert Johnson only had 3 assists, I think it's good to see Newkirk as those two are kind of like the two-headed monster to try to replace Yogi. That between the two of them, you get 9 assists. I think on most nights you're going to feel pretty good about the result if you can do that. And again, IU with 20 assists in total on 29 made field goals is a good sign from a ball movement standpoint. And I thought Newkirk exemplified that pretty well. So I'm going to lump all the newcomers together, both freshmen and Freddie McSwain. Games like these, when you feel like you're going to be up by a pretty wide margin, are ones where you really want to see these guys get some minutes, get a chance to play in different combinations, either with, themselves or other guys on the team. And I thought, a couple of them played really well tonight. Curtis Jones is the one that comes to mind with 9 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. Did have a couple turnovers against the press, but overall thought he played his best game since the Kansas game. You had Devontae Green didn't score, didn't have a ton of a couple turnovers and assist, rebound. Not a whole lot from him. Deron Davis again, another solid performance. 6 points, 4 rebounds. had a couple blocks. He and Thomas Bryant were swatting shots left and right when they were in there together for a little while. And then Freddie McSwain, 3 of 3 from the floor, had 6 points, 3 rebounds in just 10 minutes for him. So thoughts on the newcomers for this team and what you saw from them tonight that bodes well going forward?
Yeah, Curtis Jones obviously stood out. I think that he took 2 threes. The 2 threes he missed were kind of, I wasn't sure. I thought he might have pulled the trigger a little early on him, but 5 assists. The guy's distributing the ball. He's aggressive on defense, which I like. It can kind of burn him a little bit, but that's a freshman. They do that. The 2 turnovers, one of them was a pass that only a freshman would make, and I said that on Twitter. That's going to happen. It's a freshman. They do silly things like that. Then they watch film and they learn from it, hopefully. But his 9 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, shot 3 of 6 from the field, hit 1 of 3 3-pointers. I thought that it was a solid performance from him in 17 minutes. I think that when you get that kind of playing time, it's not about showing off. It's not about impressing. It's about showing that you fit in and feeling like you're, on the level of playing college basketball. And he looked like that tonight. Devontae Green, this was one of those freshman games where he just did not look good. I saw 1 or 2 times where he got beat defensively and didn't try to recover. And that is unacceptable. And again, he's a freshman. He'll learn and he'll figure that out. And you can't pout at yourself for screwing up in college. That's not how that works. Every possession matters. And so one time he just got blown by and he just kind of stood there, showing like a face or something, and it's like, dude, turn around and get, help out. He had 2 bad turnovers. He did have a block and a steal, but it's the kind of thing where it's hard for me to judge him harshly for that performance though, because again, he's played a handful of college basketball games, so these kind of nights are going to happen, and they're going to happen to all the other guys too. They're going to have up and down nights. That's what being a freshman is. And De'Ron Davis, the love affair continues. I love that kid. He is fantastic. He's going to be, I think by the time conference play rolls around, he's going to be huge for this team. And watching he and Thomas Bryant in there together in the second half, having a block party where they combined for 5 blocks was just fantastic. 6 points, 4 boards, 2 of 5. He made 2 of 5 from the field, made both of his free throws. That's a guy who's going to be big for Indiana, especially if Bryant has foul trouble. He's just a guy who knows how to play the game of basketball.
Yeah, and I think he's as good a segue as any to get to the North Carolina game, because I think we're going to see those 2 guys with a chance to play together a bit in that game just because of North Carolina's size. So, wanted to just kind of give some quick thoughts on North Carolina before this game. The Tar Heels have looked really good. One of the arguably the better teams so far this season. Just came off a win in Maui, beat Oklahoma State, who I think is a pretty solid team, by 32, and hung 107 on them in the semifinals, and then beat Wisconsin by 15. They were up pretty handily even in the first half. So, they are playing really well, and I think people expected them to fall off maybe more than they have without Bryce Johnson, without Marcus Page. But they have really looked good. They've got 5 guys, I think, in scoring in double figures at this point, led by Joel Berry, who's played really well from a guard spot for them. Justin Jackson will be a good matchup for, the OGs or Juwan Morgans at the small forward spot. And then they've got Isaiah Hicks and Kennedy Meeks, both big guys inside, averaging about, 18 points and 16, 17 rebounds between the 2 of them there. And then a freshman, Tony Bradley, another big guy, averaging 11 points and 7 rebounds so far. So, a lot of size there. I think we're going to see a really, high-paced game. They like to get out and run. IU obviously wants to do that as well. So a lot of up and down in that game. Rebounding has been a real strength for IU so far. That will be tested undoubtedly in this game. North Carolina is going to, at least right now as I'm looking at this, they're second in the nation in offensive rebounding percentage. IU, to its credit, 12th in defensive rebounding percentage, and probably will at least stay there, or maybe even improve on that after tonight. So I think that'll be important to watch their battle on the boards. But North Carolina really shooting the ball well, both from 3-point range and 2-point range. So it's going to be a challenge for an IU team that has struggled defensively so far. North Carolina is going to put a lot of pressure on them, and it will be for sure the first real kind of raucous environment in Assembly Hall. And I think that will be really exciting to see. Students will be back on campus, big name opponent in there. should be a great game on Wednesday night at 9, and that game's going to be on ESPN. So yeah, as Ryan put in the chat, they're experienced, deep, and big, and that is a challenging combination no matter how you look at it. And so I think it'll be a good test for IU. It'll show what they've learned from the games they've had so far this season, what they learned from that loss to Fort Wayne, and how they're going to be able to build on that going forward. So we're looking forward to it, and we will most certainly be back here to talk about that game, win or lose, after that one goes final. And before we get to last call, just one quick reminder, great way to support the show is by ordering the official Assembly Call t-shirt from HoosierProud.com. As I mentioned earlier in the show, got mine this week. Looks great. Definitely a step up in quality over the ones that we had before. So we definitely encourage everybody to go out and pick one of those up. You can go to HoosierProud.com and check out their selection of unique, stylish apparel that anyone with Indiana roots will love. And don't forget to use the promo code Assembly to get 15% off. That works for the Assembly Call logo t-shirts and anything else that you buy on the site. There's a lot of good stuff on there. So again, that URL is HoosierProud.com. All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we're getting ready here to wrap up IU's 85-52 win over Mississippi Valley State. And we're going to go to last call now. Should be a slightly shorter version of last call since it's just the two of us. So, Ryan, I will let you go first with your last call for tonight's game.
I just want to let people know, this team, it's still got some learning to do and still got some forming to do. It's still kind of a lump of clay that they're putting together. There's a lot, and it's high quality. You just have to kind of form it and shape it. And I think we saw in Fort Wayne that a lot of people have bought into this being a finished product, and it clearly is not. And I think that winning against Kansas sort of raised expectations, maybe higher than they should have been this early. And Tom Crean at Hoosier Hysteria said, be patient with us. It's going to take time. And he knows better than anybody that it was going to take time. And you sort of sense that those chickens came home to roost against Fort Wayne. So I think that what you've got to realize is that going into this North Carolina game, that is an experienced, deep, big team. It's going to be a tough test for Indiana. Indiana can beat this team, though. The key is going to be rebounding. The key is going to be OG Anunoby, Thomas Bryant, Deron Davis, and Juwan Morgan stepping up inside to keep those guys off the glass and defend Hicks, Meeks, and Tony Bradley. Those guys, you cannot dominate Indiana if Indiana wants to win the game. So I think that from the guard perspective, it's pretty much a wash, but the key is going to be topping that front court and beating that front court. And Indiana certainly is capable of doing it. It's just a matter of which team shows up and if they play together and play the right way. So it's going to be a fun game. I'm excited about it. Another great measuring stick for this team and a chance to prove that the Fort Wayne loss was a fluke instead of something that, hey, this is a team that's really struggling. So I think it'll be a real fun game. And anytime Indiana and North Carolina get together, it's a great thing for college basketball.
Yeah, I think, the one thing that I'm going to look for in that game is just consistency and sustaining play at a high level. We didn't really talk about, I mentioned it briefly earlier, but there was, a stretch in the first half when, Mississippi Valley State, who's arguably one of the, 5 worst programs in the country, went on a 12-0 run. And that was after IU got off to a really good start, and they played, really with a lot of intensity on the defensive end, moved the ball really well, and felt like they had, had a concerted effort to shake some of the things that didn't go well against Fort Wayne. And then they went into this funk in the, kind of middle to late portion of the first half and really let Mississippi Valley State in it. And I think, those kinds of lapses against a team like this, you can overcome in the same way that I think some of these other wins might have gotten them into some bad habits heading into the Fort Wayne game. You're not going to be able to do that against North Carolina. Now you can make the argument that it should be easier to maintain that level of intensity against North Carolina. But, to me, that's what I'm looking for is how they sustain that. IU did a good job of sustaining the momentum they gained at the end of the first half by playing really well to start the second half and really put the game away and kind of cruise from that point. So what I want to see from that game is come out strong from the start and keep it up as they go, because they can't have these lulls of play that they've had where they just miss opportunities to either extend leads, get back in games, and things like that. And so that, for me, is what I'll really be looking for. And the one thing that, if anything, was lacking at times tonight in a game against a team that they had clearly overmatched, and in a game that they won by 33 points. So that will do it for this edition of the Assembly Call. We will be back again on Wednesday night after the IU North Carolina game. Again, that's a 9 o'clock Eastern tip on ESPN. Would imagine it'll actually probably tip a little bit later than that, as the game before it will assuredly run over. But hopefully, around 9:10, it'll get started, and we'll be here after the game to break it down for you. We appreciate everybody for listening tonight to Ryan and I try to go it alone without Jared. Jared, I missed you tonight because hosting the show is much harder than my usual role in here. So hopefully we did you proud. But again, IU wins over Mississippi Valley State 85-52, and we will talk to everybody on Wednesday night. Go Hoosiers.